Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Brittany of BrittanyJJones.com. In this video today, I will be demonstrating how to do a Hong Kong finish. Let's get started. To demonstrate a Hong Kong finish, I'm going to be using this piece of scrap fabric here. As you can see, I have sewn my seam allowance together here. I've stitched this at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I've just pressed my seam open flat. So that is what I've done here with this piece of scrap fabric. For doing a Hong Kong finish, you can use 1-inch wide bias strips of your underlining or your lining fabric, or you can use some double fold bias tape. For this demo, I'm going to be using double fold bias tape. This is the bias tape that I'm going to be using, and just for reference, this is extra wide double fold. So as you can see here on this purchased bias tape, one end is a little bit longer than the top fold. You can see this one here comes out a little bit more. It's not perfectly folded in half. And so I'm going to take this portion here that comes out a little bit and make sure that this is going to the back side of my fold so that while I'm stitching, I can make sure that I catch this portion in my stitch. So what we want to do is we want to open out the bias tape. We can press one end of it flat. And again, this here was the shorter end. We want to match up the raw edges here, only with the seam allowance. Match up your raw edges. We can place a few pins here. Okay, now once you have it pinned, we can go to the sewing machine, and using small stitches, I'm going to put my sewing machine at about a 2.0 for this. We're going to stitch right here along the raw edge, seam allowance only, at a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So we should be right here in this first fold. Again, you can press yours open flat if you like, or you can just open it up like I've done here. And we're just going to stitch right here along this first fold. So let's go ahead and go to the sewing machine and do that first stitch. All right, now that we have this edge of our bias tape stitched onto the seam allowance, now we can just turn the bias tape toward the inside and under the seam allowance to enclose our seam. So all of this can now fold nice and neat inside of the bias tape. Now we can go to the sewing machine, and we want to stitch right here beside the binding. We want to have the stitch onto the garment, making sure that we catch the underside. That's why I put the longer side of the binding on the underside. That way we can stitch right here beside this seam here, and we can catch in the bottom portion of the bias tape. You can go ahead and grab some pins and pin in place if you would like. Or if you have given it a really good press and everything is laying nice and flat, you can go ahead and stitch it in place. You could also baste it by hand just to make sure that everything is lining up nice and neat if you prefer to do that. But again, I'm just catching in the underside of the fold of the bias tape. So when I go to the sewing machine, I'm going to stitch close to the binding, making sure that I catch the underside of it. Let's go ahead and stitch it in place now. Okay, I've just stitched this close, and I went to the pressing station to just give it another press. This is what it looks like on the right side, and I used the contrasting thread so you can see that I didn't stitch on the binding. I stitched very close to the binding, but on the underside you can see that I caught the folded pressed edge of the binding here. And that is what we're aiming for here with our Hong Kong finish. And this is also a fantastic option to finish off your seams if you do not have a serger. Well, that is all for the demo, and I really do hope that you all enjoyed it. If you would like to see more how-to sewing videos, you can check out the playlist here on YouTube up under our how-to section, or you can head on over to simplicity.com and watch them there. Until next time, blessings everyone. Bye.